enough good things about Dr. Courtney. But teachers are on a fixed salary, and he's been here and gave up his weekend because the Louisville band is that important to him. That he would come and honor us and teach his students that these traditions that you do, they came from this group. They started with them or just their predecessors. And so the kids, I love the kids. I've been able to sit through some of their rehearsals and listen to them, and they play difficult music. And if you've ever seen one of their shows are more difficult to march and take longer to learn than ours were. I prefer to watch our shows even today, because there were fewer moving parts. It's easier for me to pay attention to what's going on. If you look at the YouTube things, it's just a preference. But special thanks to him. And I didn't know how this was going to go into a table that I had conceived of almost 4 years before. And if you're in IT, you know that that's kind of cool to be able to get that kind of feedback. It was Camelot. Well, so what makes up a Camelot? Well, if you've ever seen, I had to say, I forgot, I have a couple of disclaimers I should have said earlier, but I'm going to borrow from a Broadway play, which you can already figure out which one that is, and a presidential speech. So just have to tell you about my plagiarism. Camelot has exceptional leadership. Camelot, if you're in a Camelot, they do things that no one else does. They don't really even have peers. They do amazing things that are remembered long after those people pass from that place. Many people, I'm convinced that many people in life never get to have a Camelot moment. But I was blessed because I got to have one in corporate life. And when he said, in the moment that he said this was Camelot, I knew exactly what he meant because I had been through two already. The one previous to that was at East Texas State University, and I got to meet James Keene and my wife Kim. And James was the second-year director there, went on to be the fourth ever director of bands at the University of Illinois. Just an amazing man, and I could tell from the first rehearsal this was a special thing. We did things in college at halftime shows that no one else was doing at the time. He was an innovator, and we knew he wasn't going to be at East Texas State long. And so he went on to work at the University of Illinois, and is now a world-known clinician. Even though he's retired, he's still, like most band directors I run into, know him and have had clinics with him. And I was blessed to be able to, for just a brief moment, to be part of that. And it was special. It was a Camelot. And the more there was, I realized I wasn't a musician like everybody else was a musician. I had to work harder at it to be good at it than the guys that were going to be music majors. And so I had to go find out something else. And I think in life we all have a superpower, and it's one of those magical moments when we find out what it is. And I started taking some other classes. I took a computer science class, and I was turning things in 3 weeks before it was due, and then the day it was due, panicking because I didn't have anything to turn in. The instructor said, "Don't worry, Rick, you turned this one in 3 weeks ago." And so I found something that was easy for me to do, and I liked it, and it was my superpower. And you're blessed in life if you find that, and if you get to work in it, because I think we all have one. But I knew about how special those situations were because of the first Camelot that I was in. the first Camelot that I was in was to be a member of this band. It had exceptional leadership. It had a group of people that did what other bands at the time weren't willing to do. Louisville was a small town at the time. And you remember when we just had the one traffic light and there was just stop signs going over the bridge over 35 to get to the school. And it's like, why did they build the school way out in the middle of nowhere when they built the old school that they just tore down? Because everybody then lived over there on the other side of the freeway. And people at that time, you ask my mom, she'll back me up on this. There were people who, well, in Louisville, there were no pizza places, there were no bowling alleys, the movie house burned down. If you wanted to do something, there was 5 nights a year to do something. That was the 5 home games, and then you went out of town for the rest of it. And the farmers weren't all that good back in those days. I mean, they just weren't. And but the band was good, and people went to see the band because you probably were related to somebody in the band, or the drill team, or the football team. But you went to see the band. Why? Because the band was great. And I don't know why I thought my mom at the time was an unbiased judge on these things, but we would have the halftimes, and I would come up to her and I would say, "Mom, who won halftime?" And she would say, "Well, y'all won it before you ever started your show." And I said, "Well, what did you mean by that?" And she said, "Well, the other band, they looked kind of like a herd of turtles going out there onto the field. They weren't really going anyplace, but there was a lot of movement going on." And one of the things that made it a Camelot for us is that, and the things that we did that our peers weren't willing to do, is that the show started when you stepped on the track. The show didn't start when you stepped on the field, it started when you stepped on the track. And from that moment on, it was show on. And we did everything as one. We marched to our place, we stood still, and when it was our time, we made an orderly entrance onto the field, and then we did a killer show. And I remember that there was always a way to tell before we left the field whether or not we did a good show. Because there was a thing that we earned if we did a good show, and that was Mr. White saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the band that marches with pride." And when we exited the field, we got that. All except for one time. And we didn't deserve it that time. It was a hard show. It was my sophomore year, and I didn't know the show well to start. I was afraid all the way to Bonham, Texas, which is a long way. And knowing what was going to, it was as solid for me going to the game as it was coming back from the game. And several things kind of happened at that show that made us fall apart. And back then they didn't have these nice painted fields where you could see where the yard lines were. You had to put up the markers, and one of the markers was in the wrong place, and so there was a parallelogram and a counter march 5 yards off, and then at the end we were all out of sync, and it was just a disaster. And we didn't hear it that day. And so the next time we had a rehearsal, and I'm telling this story because Mr. White did not tell it right. But it was raining on the Tuesday after that, and this was going to be our contest show. And it was almost like in Hollywood where they're changing something. There's a sea change that's about to happen in the story that they have rain. You know what I'm talking about? That device. It was almost like it had been called down onto us because there was about to be a change in the way we did things. And that was the day, and we met in the cafeteria because it was raining outside. It never rained when we were marching. Well, it rained on us. I'll get that in a minute. We met in that cafeteria, and that was when Mr. White came in and said, "I finally did it, didn't I? I finally wrote a show that you can't march." because that's the way it felt. And there was no way we were going to let that happen again. And we learned how to learn to march differently than we ever had before. Such that the next year, a show that, if you look at it, it's just as hard to march. But people went up to Mr. White and said, this show's not hard enough. The contest show. Well, it wasn't the show that had changed. It was us. We learned how to do it easier. We learned how to, we adapted. We learned how to be great. And because we weren't going to have that happen again, and we went out and marched that hard show. And Russ and Cindy led us in that, on that show. And they took over when Mr. White left the cafeteria after he said that, and just left us to our own devices. I'm pretty sure that there was some forethought and, teamwork that went on with Miss Allen in retrospect about that, but didn't matter. It worked because he heard us in the worst possible place, in the innermost part of our soul where pride sits. And we learned that show when we went on to do it. And so we did things that other people weren't willing to do. I mean, we wore white gloves so that you could see our hands. We wore white shoes so you could see where they hit the sideline. And there was a big white stripe on our trousers so that you could see when we moved. And the top of our shakos were white. And did I mention white? Yeah, I mentioned white shoes. White everywhere, except we also had the twink notion that the band uniform should in some way reflect the school colors. And so they were always maroon and white. And so we had this mystique about us, that we could do things, and we're willing to do things that other people weren't willing to do. It was part of our Camelot. So how did, I need to back up a second. Years later, and I had season tickets for many years to the Farmer games. So I was a student of the Louisville band. I knew how it evolved. And there came a year where the Louisville band stepped onto the track and they were wearing black uniforms. And they looked like a herd of turtles going to the field to do their show. And on that day, a little piece of me died on the inside. Because I knew that there was no longer anything being done to make themselves better than the guys that they were working against, competing against. There was a girl at church that was in the band, and I asked her, why don't y'all go to black uniforms? And she said, well, it makes it harder to see if we make a mistake. Which is kind of a logical argument, and so I kind of let that go. But all these things were not what we chose to do. We chose to wear white. We chose to put the balls of our feet on the sideline so you could see our alignment. We chose to do things that were like that, not because they were easy. We did them because they were hard. And it was part of who we were. And how would this affect us later in life? That we did these things. Well, if you'll bear with me for a moment, if you mind standing, there's a demonstration I need to do. So could everybody just stand up, please, for just a moment. And I'm going to ask you to stand with feet about a shoulder width apart, and then reach up in as high as you can possibly reach. With one hand, won't work with two. Okay, now reach higher. Everybody's got that space. And we didn't learn that. You can sit down now. I've been trying to think over the last few weeks as to what do you call that space there? What do you call that place where you go past how high you can possibly reach and then you reach higher? What do you call that? I didn't know what to call it. And I still don't. So for right now, we're just going to call it the Pride Zone. Because for 4 years, I lived in that. Because these wonderful people who agreed to come back and direct us taught us, they thought they were music teachers. And that they were teaching us how to do music. But they taught us so much more than that. Let me tell you what has been some brain research that has been recently done. They've recently found out that when you are engaged in playing a musical instrument, especially if you happen to be moving while you're doing it, that your entire brain is active. There's not a single section of it that's not active. And when you're doing it as a group, the first thing that happens is that your breathing synchronizes together as a group. And that's easy to understand because we always take a deep breath and we start. So that one kind of makes sense, right? But because we're doing the same things at the same times, our brain waves synchronize. And if you're playing in the same section and you're playing the same piece, not only that, but after a while, even your heartbeats will synchronize. So I think we finally figured out why all the sections have such different personalities. It wasn't because they picked us out that way and that's just the way it always works. Our brains were taught to function a certain way and it gave us these characteristics. But the point is, they were teaching us how to use our entire brain at the same time. And when you look at what we did with our lives, on the website I asked people what was their vocation. And this is what I found. 4 business owners, 1 police chief, 1 fire chief, 6 IT pros, 6 accounting and financial professionals, 1 certified HR consultant, 1 manager, 1 escrow officer, 9 teachers / coaches / administrators, 3 real estate professionals, 1 pilot, 6 musicians, 4 of those a PhD, 1 with a Grammy nomination, 2 current professors, 1 retired from the Switzerland Symphony Orchestra, 2 dentists, a medical doctor, a nurse, 2 retired Air Force officers, and 2 attorneys. This is an impressive list. We were the achievers of our classes. Why? Because we knew how to use our entire brains to live in this zone that other people have, but they don't even know that's there. We lived in it for 4 years while we were here, but our Mordred was graduation. Graduation was doomed to come, and it was going to pass for us, and it passed for the directors too, and so did what the band stood for back in those days. I think that as we go through life, and I don't know if it's just in this country, or if it's in every country, or maybe just this culture, but there seems to be some innate sense that we should do something with our lives, that as we leave this planet, we can say that we left it better than we found it. That we did something while we were here that was worthwhile. That we did something that made just our memory alone to be important to someone. And I'm here to say, Carol Allen and Rex White, what we did with our lives is your validation. And I have a plaque to give you that we've all signed. I'll give it to you in just a minute. But I need to finish this up first because we got a concert coming and there's other speakers. So let it be remembered from December to December that once in a noble town, where once it never rained till after sundown, by 8 a.m. the clouds all disappeared. Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for one brief, shining moment where we were the band that marches with pride. Thank you. Plaques that you can sign, and I'm going to read what they say. It says, and this is a quote from Thomas Broome, "One mark of a great educator is the ability to lead students out to new places where even the educator has never been." Thank you. Thank you. There's a big validated stamp. About these things that I had to say, and I would wake up at night and couldn't go to sleep thinking about it. And when I finally wrote it down, I was able to get past that. And then my computer crashed, and along with it with the document. But I was able to reread it because it's all right here. It was all right here. Lisa has something that she wants to present, and then Russ Gerbil has something to say.
Who, Chief? What say Chief has something to say?
Pardon me?
You said Chief has something to say?
Chief has something to say.
Chief can go.
Well,
All right, I'll do you guys first.
y'all could not go away without something. Or, see you around. It's your one last thing I'd like to say, I may get a little carried out. This one's for you, but before I get to you, you have to know that every event is right. I don't want you to say that I think we found our right to this event. You've done it well. Thank you very much.
Along that same note, we did take up a little bit of a collection, and I know from past experiences how hard it is to put something like this together and how much organization it takes. And so, Ricky and to your wife, we greatly appreciate everything you've done, and this is for you. If you didn't get a chance to sign the card, you get it from them and sign it, but we really do. And actually there's more because everybody was so generous. We've decided to do something a little bit special with maybe a photo that we get tonight. Hopefully we'll get like a group photo, and then we're going to do something a little bit special with that. So,
Awesome.
But not to put a damper on that. So there are some wonderful gift cards in there. But if anybody happens to see an Albertsons bag with more gift cards in it, yeah, please let me know because, yeah, they got lost. And so these are the replacements. So let me just, if y'all will just, I don't know if they fell out of my car. I have been driving around the parking lot. I can't find them. So, but they are still in an Albertsons bag. So if you find them, please let me know. But we do love you and thank you for all your.
Thank you, everybody.
lucky to three of the 4 or 5 that I know of are in the room. One of them, I didn't know she was a leader, Jane Johnson. Thank you guys for the lifelong love of music that you've given to me and to countless other students across the generations that you guys have provided for students just like me. A forward kid that wanted to play football. We got talk in later too. Had a few lips. So I do have a couple of funny rec stories on that. So I was in the 8th grade. Mr. Brady had called me into trying for a year, trying to play the tuba for a year. And at the end of the year, you don't want to play the trombone anymore, or the tuba anymore, we'll switch back to trombone, no problem. I said, sure, I'll try. So I used to go, I'd go to the band hall, they're located at the high school in Charles, and you have to walk, I had to walk my tuba home every day, a couple of miles to get there. And I think it was probably the worst sousaphone they probably had in stock at the time. So one day, I'm walking home in the rain. I must have looked at because Mr. White stopped at his Ford and said, hey, you mind if you live in the same area at the time? Get your left. I never forgot that. That was such a teaching moment right there. Willing to, he didn't know anything about it really, but willing to do anything for a student to help them their love and help them great thing. My other big story was, and I kind of winked at it today when we were doing the school song, and we had the 3 drum majors up there directing the school song. So I got busted one time. The band period had started, and just went right in there. So I get up on the plane like a smart ass and start directing, mimicking some of the same movements that I think my punishment was he made me stay up there and correct me. So at one point, that old Ford was really a kind of a favorite of Rex's. Remember what happened to it?
Where is it?
Remember what happened to it?
I do remember. You talking about the dust vacuum into?
Where is it? Hold on.
I thought this might be something.
We all love that car.
So Ricky, I think I let you enough time to do. No. So appreciate everybody being here today. I think when Ricky talked about doing this, visions of Mr. Hollins always popped in my head. At that big band concert in 38 where they had all the years that they were on and trying to play. And I tell you what, I was doubtful for me not being able to play. Because I could, I kind of up Rex, I got to do a lot of weeks ago. I started playing. It's like, gut will fit. This is great. I'll sit there and we'll take it. Fortunately, we've been able to play a few notes. It's not too terribly out of tune. Sorry, Miss Ellen. Thank you all for being here. Ricky, anything else?
Mike Olson has something.
Before Mike, I got to tell you something about this car. It's a 1954. Kathy and I bought it from her uncle for $100. We didn't have a second car. So that was our second car. And it was black, the original black. And it was beautiful, we thought. And it had the old brown interior, tan interior, and the headliner had gotten bad in it, and it was kind of flopping down and stuff like that. And I drove it up to the bus barn every day because we had to drive a bus to the elementary school, pick up the 6th grade kids and bring them to band hall. So I had to park up at the bus barn, and somebody, it might have even been me, backed into the back end of it to the bus. And it ruined the deck lid in the back end of it. So I didn't have enough money to get it fixed, so we looked around for wrecking yards, and we found a deck lid for the 50 Model Ford at a wrecking yard, but it was green. So we put that green deck lid on there, and every day it was parked at the band hall, and I think the kids were real embarrassed about it. My brother lived here at the time, and so he said, I need to use your car this afternoon. And I thought, he's got a pickup, what's he want my old car for? He said, well, let's use it today. He made up a story. So he took my car. Next day, he didn't bring it back. I said, where's my car? He said, I forgot that I couldn't get it started. It made it some story. He kept it about 3 days. And when he brought it back, it was it was painted maroon. It had a white interior. It had a new headliner. It was a brand new car that looked exactly like this. Maroon and white.
Well, I'll try to be short and hopefully loud enough. When I first thought about getting a band, I had a cousin, Glenda Massacre, who was a drum major, and so there was already a pretty big onus coming in to at least perform well and not embarrass Glenda. And I remember being amazed the first time that I came in and met with the seniors and the juniors who were sort of the leadership of the band, and because this is a damn impressive group. And I mean, they were sharp, they were tough, and it was a little bit like joining a professional football team. I mean, you just didn't mess around. And all of a sudden, I had memories of all these banners, as we got ready for the contest. And, one of the things that taught me that I've carried through the law practice and really everything I've done is there's a lot more to preparation than just a little bit of effort. It's a long-term effort. And, it started months and months in advance. I love the way the rest, we would always do pieces of shows and then ultimately wind up with our contest show. And it was just a great way to prepare. And so even people to this day not got crazy the way I prepare for oral arguments and other law things. But part of it is, it's just what I learned. And it's the way I learned to do things the right way. One of the things Rex taught me that was really special was focus. And the farmerettes had a routine, and we would sometimes practice with them. And one time, they had us, we were playing the Mason Street Blues. And they had these little boxes, I think they were Coke bottle boxes or something. And they did a routine that I gotta tell you it was bawdy. And Rex walked up to me and I had the horn, but it wasn't even in my mouth. And he said, it probably looked better at least But of course, one of the most fun things we had, both Carol and Rex were people who rolled with the punches. And they knew how to we were under a lot of pressure. But they also knew how to relieve it. And of course, the Shading Creek fight the first year was legendary. And in fact, I went up writing an article for Farmer's Harvest that I won a contest of it, talking about everybody, just what chaos it was. But it was one of those things that started inside the dark and it kind of grew and it got worse and it got more mayhem. And they could have put a stop to it, but they joined in. And before it was over, it became a really great tradition for the band. One of the other really indelible memories of just sort of the way we lived as a family and as a group and the way we were taught was I remember before we got to football games, we would, and I'm worse than Ricky, I don't know about tear gun, but we would go through a routine of singing several songs, and I'm not sure I can remember all the ones we sang, but we sang Lord's Prayer. And I think we even sang Kumbaya. And, and frankly, to this day, that's what I say to my boys. So those lessons are here for good. And Carol, when I first got in band, I wanted to be in big band, the A band, or whatever it was. We had all these different names for it. And so I wasn't in it. And she had really 4 years to try to whip my butt into shape in terms of learning some humility. And because I came in pretty high and probably remained that way. But that year was really one of the defining years of my life. The people that we met in that band, it was a really exceptional group. And of course, being under Carol and the leadership both she and Rex, you know, you can talk about the music, you can talk about excellence, but the thing that I took away from it the most was how to be a decent person, how to be a good person, successful person, but how to just be the kind of person that other people respect and like. And that never failed us on that. Never failed us. We went through, I know the band camp, we went through shaving cream fights, we went through Nixon resigning. The rest of the world was going completely crazy around us, much like it is today. But we were centered. We were centered. And for that, we are all eternally grateful.
My brother and I were probably two of the luckiest kids in the world. He knew at 5 years old that he wanted to be an FBI agent like my dad, and he was. And when I was 5 years old, I was standing on a street corner in Tupelo, Mississippi, where I now live, and watched the Tupelo High School band march by. And I never, from that time on, I knew. To this day, I'll drive by a high school someplace in Mississippi. I'll stop the car, put the window down, and sit and listen. And I still get that same feeling. And of course, tonight is today and last night have been pretty amazing. I'll be 75 years old in October. I have a long life ahead of me. My mother will be 95, and she still has good sense and is pretty amazing. I have to get back to Monday so I can take her to eat lunch with her buddies. But I was very lucky. I went on to Tupelo High School. I became an all-state football player, so I had a love for the instrument. And at 20 years old, I graduated from college and became a high school band director in Mississippi, Buffalo, Mississippi, for 4 years. First 3 years I went to contest. I was told that I did a good job for one. Fourth year, we got sweepstakes. And they didn't mention that. I wanted to come to Texas because my college band director was at the University of Texas, and several of my friends were coming. So I stopped in Waco. I heard that they had a junior high band position open, and I wanted to interview. And I sat down. Supervisor of music came in, and he said, "You're here for the cool job." And I said, "No, I'm here to apply for a job as the band director." And he started laughing. He said, "We wouldn't even consider a woman." So there were years. This kind of is what I went through for 8 years before I got to Louisville. So if I was a little arrogant and had a little attitude, that was just what we did. Yes, yeah. Well, I went on to Colleen, and I was there for 4 years, and we started with about 100 kids. It was an army town. I was at Nola Junior High. I think we had 100 kids in band, and 4 years later we had 350. And it was a pretty good program. I think we had 30 kids in the region band, but it was a much easier district than this area up here. But I wanted to move to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I got a job at a music store in the summer, and it was a fine music store, and I had a mobile home, and I just moved it to Louisville. And the day I moved to Louisville, I was in the office there at Stonegate Mobile Home Park. It's not existing anymore. And a kid came in selling soap for the Louisville Bank. And he said that the assistant band director was no longer at Louisville High School as of that day. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting since I don't have a job except sweeping the floor or whatever at the music store." So I applied, and Rex and his staff and family, and I think they thought about it a long time. But in August, I was hired as the assistant band director at Louisville High School. Of course, I spent the next 8 years here. I took a break after that. I was tired, and I had worked 16 years, really hard. And I got out and sold in church for 3 years, but my heart still belonged in music. And I went to Hutchinson Junior High in Arlington, Texas, and I taught there for 10 years. And I had a group of pretty exceptional kids, 8th and 9th graders, and I took them to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and we performed there. And that was special. My last 4 years I taught at Bowie High School, and probably the most memorable thing there was we marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Dublin, Iowa. And we had 500,000 people standing watching the parade route, and that was pretty special. When I left, the school district offered all I was could retire. I was 54. They said if you want to retire, we'll pay you a year's salary. And I wasn't really ready to quit teaching, but I couldn't turn that down. So the Bowie High School band had a piece of music commissioned. It's called Alan Rich. And it was written by a former member of the Louisville band, Mike Miller. And that kind of brought me back to those formative years that I was here for 8 years. And tonight I have the privilege of conducting a piece written by another member of the Louisville band, Mike Harper. And I think those two things kind of put an exclamation point on what this program has meant to me. And I thank you for the support and of course all of our appreciations. Thank you.
Began my career as a teacher, and I had an opportunity to go to Arlington to work. Thought I was going to go over there, and Bill contacted me and said, come interview, and I came over and talked to him. A little while later, he called Captain, and he said, look, you can't let him go to Arlington. He's got to come to Louisville. So that's how I ended up here. It was the best career move I could have possibly made, because Bill Brady was the best teacher and the best mentor that anybody could have worked with in the beginning. And although we only worked together 3 years, it seemed like such an impact on the way I talk. So everything you said about me is really about Bill Brady. And everything that we've done here at the Louisville High School Band had to do with the things that he taught me and the things that he taught the students that were before you in the Louisville High School Band. After Bill was here and I was here, I was the first assistant that ever taught in Louisville. Before that, it was just one band director. And I have already told you, I think that was 1966. I was 22 years old. And Bill and I hired Ricky Robinson, and then I hired Ken Ray, and then Cecil Darby was teaching at DeLay Middle School. And right along in there is when Carol came along, and I can tell you this, when she came and interviewed, there was no doubt in my mind that we were going to hire her. So I got Bob Brashears and I got the others together, and I said, all right, I found the person that's going to be the assistant at Louisville High School. And then we found a whole bunch of stuff we had in common, and that just made all the difference in the world. We were a family. You were a big part of that family. You're more than just students. You were a part of what we were. And that was such an important thing. Then Cecil Darby was at DeLay, and Carol was an assistant in high school, and I may have some of these things in the wrong order. But then Bill McMath came because we opened Hedrick Middle School. He was the first director at Hedrick Middle School. He was already teaching over at Saginaw, so we lured him over here to teach with us in Louisville. Then Bob Brashears came, and he was the band director at DeLay. And he was also, if you all remember, the jazz ensemble director at Louisville High School, and then became the assistant director at Louisville High School. Great guy. And he was going to be here last night, but he has a son, a daughter, much like Carol's brother, who is an FBI special agent. She lives in Houston. And she called Friday during the day and said, I've been called out to serve some top secret warrants, and I'm going to be gone for X number of hours. Need you to come to Houston to keep the grandkids. So that's where they were. Bill and Dixie had to go to Fayetteville, Arkansas for his brother's 50th wedding anniversary. So both of them have really strong reasons why they're not here. And they send their love and they send their thanks for all that Rick did to put this program together, and for all of you for coming. With us today is Walter Simmons. Stand up, Walter. Walter was Bill's assistant at Hedrick, and when Bill moved to the high school, became the head person at Hedrick. And how many years were you here, Walter? 7 years. Carol was here 8. I was at the high school 9. So you're looking at a lot of years at the high school, for the high school band. And then when Milliken Middle School opened, we hired Steve White. And Steve was the first band director at Milliken. As you know, he went on to teach at Marcus and have a wonderful career at Marcus. And then became the supervisor of the Fine Arts program here for a period of time before he finally retired again. So we've had a wonderful experience with the staff that we have here, and just wonderful years. A couple of other people I want to introduce to you. I know you know them, but I just want to take a formal opportunity. 2 years before I came to Louisville in 1950, I married my high school sweetheart. So we've been married 52 years. Wow. Lakeland Elementary, you might remember her at Lakeland Elementary. She was the secretary for Mr. Burkhead at Lakeland Elementary. And then she quit for a few months and had Kevin. Kevin, stand up. Kevin was 8 years old when we moved away. He was born in 1970, so some of you probably babysat him. Now he's a professional musician, sings and writes with a rock band called Little Green Men. And tonight, after he finishes here, he's going to Arlington, and they have a show at a club in Arlington. So he'll be performing tonight. Music that he writes, music that the guitar player in the band, the lead guitar player is the band director of Brewer High School. So they play really interesting music, really fun music. If you ever want to go clubbing some night, find Little Green Men. They're on the way. And he also sings in a big band. Sinatra and all those guys that sing all those songs. So he's very involved in music. And then Kathy, after Kevin was born, went back to work at the administration building. So you may remember when Mr. Stuber came here, he brought Barry Jackson to the administration building as an assistant. Kathy came over there and was the secretary to both of them. Very interesting experience. We loved Mr. Stuber. He was a wonderful man, a wonderful administrator, and a very strong person. Learned a lot from him. So after we left Louisville in 1978, Kyle was born in 1977, so he was only here a year. And we moved away in 78, went back to Grand Saline. Both he and Kevin grew up in Grand Saline until Kyle was a sophomore in high school. We moved back to Flower Mountain. And the Louisville band program was in a bit of disarray, and we knew Steve White, and we knew Larry Sigler, and we knew several of the teachers at Marcus, so we moved out to Flower Mountain. He went to Marcus, don't move. So he graduated from Marcus, and he went to North Texas as a music major. Now he's the band director, as you all know, at Grand Saline High School, and very successful there, and we're very proud of the things that he does. So Kyle is here as well. This is, as I told the band, the first time they've ever played in the same band together. They're 7 years apart, and they never were in the same high school band or college band. Then Kyle married Christy. Christy's name was. Christy's from Louisville. Marcus, and they met at Marcus, and now we have 3 wonderful grandchildren. We have Cass, who's sitting with them above. We have Jackie, who is sitting with Mr. Brown. And we have Henley, who is where? Henley, with Miss Green. So we've had a wonderful life, a wonderful career, a lot of it due entirely to the things we experienced here in Louisville. I want to personally recognize Dr. Marty Courtney and David Kraft, his assistant. You guys stand up. I can't say anything more about them than Rick's already said. I mean, they have been wonderful. Dr. Courtney also has an assistant, Chris Aslew, and Cleon Murphy, and they both helped very much getting the music together and getting the program together and supporting us in every way. So I have a plaque that I prepared for Dr. Courtney and his staff that will go in the Louisville High School Band Hall in his office, we hope. It says, "The band that marches with pride, LHS Band Reunion 2016, in appreciation for your efforts to make lasting memories. LHS Band Alumni, White Volunteer, 1966 to 1970. I tell you what, Dr. Gordon and his staff epitomize what the Louisville High School Band of Marching with Pride is. You can't say enough for them for how they care about the program. Of course, the person that put all this together and made it possible for all of us to these wonderful times and wonderful memories and sharing all that we're sharing tonight is Rick and Kim McGee. Rick couldn't have done it without Kim. Kim did most of the work, Rick. Hanging out. So I have a plaque for them as well that reads, "The band that marches with pride, the LHS Band Reunion 2016, in appreciation for your efforts to make our reunion a success. LHS Band Alumni, White Allen years 1966, 1980, and beyond." One more quick thing about Ricky, he alluded to it earlier. We've known him since he was in the second grade. Because Kathy was a member of the West Main Church of Christ that sits right here by the Cane's chicken strip place. And Ricky was a member, and all of his family was a member. And so he was 2 years old when we moved here. And we knew him for a long time as little Ricky. So it's been a long association, a big association with his family. Can't say enough for all that he's done for us and all that his family's meant to us, his mom, and everybody that's associated with him and his family. All right, so let's just do a fun little quick thing. Let's go do by class. Anybody here graduated in the 60s? All right, anybody here graduated in 1970? 71? I know there's somebody in 72.
Got it. You got to pick up your mug. Come get your mug. We'll have that right out front.